I think that is so true. I'm going to ask a question that's going to relate to politics, but actually I'm not too much into politics because I've always argued that people's attitudes are what are really important. And yet I've spent a lot of years in politics trying to figure out how things work. And we do have to get involved to the point is, why don't they obey the law? There are laws in the book that's supposed to protect our privacy, and yet we have these laws being passed that violates the Constitution. And while there, and even now, I try to figure out who runs things, because there's some days I say, well, there are no two parties. They're not fighting over anything other than over power, because they get together and they do whatever they want. When it comes to foreign policy, if we got to vote for sanctions, they vote for sanctions. If we have to vote to endorse the Fed's system, they do that. And that brings up the subject, who calls the shots? And it's becoming more commonplace now for people to realize that the average congressman is not calling the shots, that there's a force out there, and it's referred to as the deep state. And I would like to know if you could make some comments on that. And some people are saying, the deep state is alive and well, and they may well be in operation, in cahoots, in maybe trying to destroy this presidency.
So yeah, this is a really complicated sort of question, because there's no clear agreement on what the definition of this term deep state means. So some people can deny it by redefining that term, or putting it in a narrow way this way, or they can say, of course it exists, by putting it in a different way. So I would say generally, when we're talking about the deep state, right, what we're talking about is a mass of government that survives beyond administrations, right, that is not responding to the politics of people. This belongs to not a particular party mechanism, but it survives across parties, across administrations. And of course, this is seen most easily, most readily in the intelligence services, because they are so little accountable to the public, right? Everything we do at the NSA, the CIA, is typically classified by default, unless you actually work to make it not classified. When I sent an email to make lunch plans with my office mates, that was going to be classified. And this is actually incentivized by policy, because when you're typing your sort of email in the office, they make you staple by policy sort of this little identification line that says, I'm this person, I work for this group in this office on this subject matter. Here's my phone numbers and everything like that. So whenever you write an email, sort of you're accountable for that. People can go, oh, I want to ask this person what's going on. But the side benefit of it is for the government is that information itself is classified. So now even the most banal email that you're sending is also classified. And while this is not necessarily designed to be that way, right? That's not necessarily the intention behind this policy. The result of this policy is the people in the intelligence community learn very quickly that they can hide any embarrassing information, they can hide any inconvenient details behind these barriers of classification. And you can think of this kind of like people playing rounds of a game. When this first started, when the classification authority first was put forward, these are times of total war, right? We're talking about concerns of foreign invasion, of U-boats in the harbor, of lives that are being lost in a real way by an actual state enemy, where there really are no rules. But what happens when the war is over, right? What happens when we win? Those structures don't go away. And in the intervening periods, right, they think about how they can use these rules for their own policy benefits, to build up their influence, their budgets, their clout, their influence. And they get better and better at this with each passing year. Each time you get a new administration, it's a new round in that game. And eventually, the people who are the greatest experts at understanding and abusing these rules, the best bureaucrats, are not sitting in the White House. They're not sitting in the Congress, because those guys come and go as the years pass, and they win elections and they lose elections. It's the people who sit there for 30 years or more in these agencies with their hands on the lever the whole time. And that's what the deep state is, sort of in a larger sense, but it's not limited to government. These people are also contractors in private sort of war-making industries, whether they're defense contractors, intelligence contractors. These are people at think tanks, groups that are designed to influence policies, sort of war-making think tanks like the Atlantic Council and things like that. And the question ultimately is, when we allow this to happen for a longer enough period of time, and they become expert enough in steering our government across parties, it doesn't matter whether Republicans in office, it doesn't matter whether Democrats in office, they all respond the same. They all eventually get to the point of saying yes when enough pressure is brought to bear. It raises the question of who really has the most power in our society. Is it the voter, and at least in theory, the politicians that are supposed to be carrying out their will, or is it this larger constellation of influential groups and actors who are able to subvert and shape the decisions, influence the decisions of these congressmen or presidents?